morning, noon, afternoon, evening, and night to all. Welcome back to ATSCast. This is your neighborhood dude, Jude, your host, and we hope you enjoyed our debate segue last week. But this week, we're back to usual. And with that, with me is the rest of the ATS Heartbeat. So, what's Aaron?
Wasari. Okay, my name is Aaron Franklin. I am 22 and I'm a university student currently studying in Malaysia, and I'm happy to be here. Amir?
Very happy to be here, huh? What's going on, people? It's Amir.
XW.
I'm in my final year of college. I'm 24 and soon to be unemployed, depending on how you see the situation.
Damn.
How's it going, Jason?
Hello. I'm doing good, Amir. Thanks for asking. My name is Jason. I am 22, turning 23 this year. And I'm currently working in Malaysia.
All right. It's only the three of us this week, but still eventful regardless. Four of us, sorry. Three plus one.
Why you don't
Anyway,
count yourself, bro?
I know, bro. You really do be like that. But you know what? A lot has happened in the sporting world over the past week. Football, or they call it here soccer in America, right? The most popular team sport in the world. So the news regarding the formation of a new European Super League consisting of the best football teams in one league really shocked everyone, didn't it? Financially, it makes sense. The new league would have begun with a $400 million investment, and that's already higher than any current competition can offer. And when the news was announced, the share prices of the teams in New York Stock Exchange increased. So normally you'd associate these events with good outcomes, right?
Mhm.
Yet everyone, or at least everyone I know, hates the idea. There's no competition, no incentives, and it's all for money. And I think that's where the crux of today's episode will be held at. Money is everywhere in any competitive sport nowadays. And with that, how does everyone feel about money in sports? Not just football, because it's basically in every sport that we watch, even in a sport as simple as, for example, table tennis. There are incentives for money. Like those that have the most resources are the ones that make it to the top. Is it essential or is it just a distraction? Yeah.
Mm,
I could
yeah, I mean,
go ahead. Yeah.
personally, I think money and sports, of course, has a very obvious correlation to it, and I think there wouldn't be sports without money, which goes to show, which goes to say, right? But like what we were talking about earlier, I don't think sports should be completely and only fueled by money, because there's a lot of other factors that come to it. Like, when you're talking about this whole situation, you're talking about competition, you're talking about, a bunch of other factors that kind of fall outside the sphere of money, right? So in that sense, I think very, very simply, I think money should be somewhat fueled by sports, but not completely. It has to take into sports should be fueled by money, but not completely, because it should take into account a bunch of other factors, and one of that is the fan base as well, I think. So, Amir?
Yeah, just to give more cadence to that, I feel as though sports results has become more interdependent with money in some regard, or in most regards. Like you definitely need a huge chunk of money or a pool of money to achieve success in your respective sport. And over the years, it's becoming a huge problem to solve in the end. So, however you see it, it creates a gap between the major players with the big pools of money with the other lesser teams with lesser chunks of money, and that really eliminates the competition of the free competition, as they say, and it bridges a gap between the fans and the sport, which really just drives people away from the sport itself.
I mean, before we get to Jason, because you both raised very interesting yet distinct points, right? One is about the like the crux of the sport itself going away in terms of instead of playing for the sport, you play for the money, and that's a really good thing to delve on. I just wanted to highlight that, Jason.
Yeah.
Something.
No, that's good. That's fine. Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, back then, money wasn't really the biggest factor. When it comes to sports, many people play because of the love for the game, and I'm glad that it's um still there till today. And obviously, with the whole, the recent news of the Super League and all, it drove the world of the sport crazy. Like the sports world just went like, you know, it's unbelievable that even the idea of have establishing this, league was possible. So I think that just generally shows the reaction of how people still um, watch the sport for the sport and play the sport for the sport instead of just securing the bag. Like Ben asking.
Whoa, 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 whoa,
Oh,
whoa.
we really could go there, by
Allegedly,
the way, because
allegedly.
that is such a huge
That is very
case
true.
study.
That is very true.
Yeah. But you see, yeah, it's good that some people are bringing certain sports back. Um, like to take the Jake Paul fight, for example. It's great that he's bringing, with all the hype and everything, he's bringing the sport back. But is he really bringing the sport back, or is it more of like a money making, you
Yeah.
know,
Even a show stunt. You could
yeah, a
easily say
stunt?
that,
So
right?
it really goes both ways. But as of today, I could say that most sports, definitely attract people with its money for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
It's definitely understandable. I mean, thank you for sharing all your opinions regarding the money, um, your views on the aspect of money in sport. But nevertheless, the question still stands: do you think this money is essential or is it a distraction? Like a simple one-word answer. I feel like it's a distraction. I honestly do. I can think the thinking about, for example, the existence of the League Cup in football, which, by the way, is like nowadays considered um, one of the lower cups to play for, lower tournaments to play for um, in English football in general. So it still exists regardless of how little people give it credit for, because it's not as doesn't have as much of a reputation,
Mhm.
and it doesn't have as much of a prize, yet it's still the funnel for smaller teams to come through, right? So I would say money is a distraction. We could go on about this, but yeah, what are your one-word answers, guys?
Ooh.
Essential or distraction?
It's kind of black or white, no? Like,
Yeah, okay. Which one
but I
leans
think
Yeah.
toward more?
yeah, but I think in when you're talking about sports, as in um like sports at its core, I think it would be considered a distraction. I would agree with you in that sense.
Uh,
That makes sense.
I think it would be it's kind of hard. Um, because you're thinking about I'm thinking about like both words, and but I'll still say distraction as of lately. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Amir?
I'm not trying to badmouth the sport, but yeah, Amir, go ahead.
I'll just say that you know money is the tool, is the item so that you can afford players to pay your wages and all that. So you can't really essentially say that it's the major part of a distraction, and it's the major crux of why a sport might be heading towards one way. Like you could point to like higher revenues and higher expenses being accrued to be a huge issue, but I think it's mainly down to the personnel,
Hmm.
which is in charge of those money instead.
Yeah,
Mhm.
let's say thank you for raising that contrasting point, because I was about to point out that I think football is a sport in itself. Is a really high reputation sport. It started off as a working class sport, and it's grown over the years because of the working class support that it's gained. So of course, trying to put a financial incentive to football will be difficult. But there are a lot of
Mm,
sports that have only grown because of financial support, right? Like, I can think of
for sure.
what even the really really. I was thinking of table tennis, but yes, table tennis is such an easy example because the Malaysian ties, right? Badminton, um,
Yeah, badminton.
and it doesn't have to be like a private company supporting. It literally is as simple as a government setting up a badminton center, a badminton youth training hub, and starting that process. That's already money, by the way. Like I wouldn't class. It's not as glamorous because it's not, for example, it's not J.P. Morgan Chase supporting the freaking system, but it still counts. Yeah.
Mm, that's true.
Well, with that,
I don't know. I don't know if there's any sport that hasn't been like forwarded with money, and as a contrast to what you're saying, like I think every
mhm.
sport that's kind of made it out there has had some large influx of money at some point in time. That's that's kind of put it in
That's very true.
spotlight.
Live in a capitalist society. That's a meme. I don't think that's related, but yeah, that's definitely a meme. But yeah, if you know, we talk about like the influence of money, especially now with the creation of the European Super League. Let's talk about the fact that it kind of failed because at this moment, as we talk, at least three-quarters of the teams participating in the European Super League are gone. So basically, a stunt created you know, to provide more financial benefits to each of these individual teams has backfired because of the passionate fan base, right? The fan bases. Um, is this, do you think, a step back for sport? Or is it a step forward? For
I
many,
first.
it's, yeah.
Oh, you can go first.
I mean, no, I was about to ask, like, is it a step
Oh,
back or a step forward? Because a lot of
okay.
times you would say that, oh, this is a good step because we're back to normal. But we've touched about the fact that money has driven sports forward in some cases, right? But yeah, feel free.
I I think it's a step forward in a way because um it shows again, as mentioned, it shows the passion of the fans, and because they wanted football to stay how it is. And although it's not a step forward in a sense that UEFA responded with like the expanded Champions League. So I would say that in is a step forward because it allows like clubs to. I'm not sure how the system works yet, but from what I heard, more teams can participate, obviously, and that gives teams in the popular leagues in around Europe to work harder to achieve and hopefully get to play in the biggest stage in European football. So that's why I think, in a way, that's a step forward.
Um, for me, it isn't crystal clear. Um, somewhat bittersweet, but more leaning towards the sweeter part. Well, the European Super League, it was just a scheme to generate more money, and U- the UEFA, the UEFA, which was in charge of the Champions League, was reporting that they were going to lose 500 million in total revenue for the upcoming season. So that prompted these 12 elite teams to create this Super League. And when when there was so much vitriol by the fans to to give their opinion on the Super League, the UFA just announced that they're gonna channel $2 billion, of which they just recently found out, recently found out of nowhere. So that could be a good thing in itself, but it could be a bad thing. The teams that withdraw as well, they've been haggling about the financial fair play rules, Some of them have been caught like trying to play around it, like Manchester City or Chelsea. They've been assigned bans and transfer bans as such, but many felt that they weren't given their due diligence. Like their punishment should have been more harsher than it really was. So in its own way, the fans are self-policing their own sport in a way, because as you can see from the aftermath, a lot of the owners and the executives are now, well, they're they're under pressure to keep their jobs. Just few days ago, the Manchester United vice executive Ed Woodward, who was really one of the catalysts for the European Super League, just resigned. So that was really a huge sigh of relief for Manchester United fans, and every fan of those clubs in the European Super League, whether it's Liverpool, Chelsea, Tottenham Hotspurs, Manchester City, Manchester United, they really want to be part of the process of their clubs again, because it feels like their their reach has just been there's just been a gulf between their reach between the club and themselves. So in a way, it's it's really a good step in its own way, and I don't think it would have happened without the European Super League being announced.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. So you said it didn't fail. It does make sense, huh, to be honest. I feel like United are better off now than they were.
So they did accomplish the goals that they intended, but it actually swayed in the hands of the people.
That is actually amazing to think
Honestly,
about,
that way.
yeah. Yeah.
That was interesting.
Aaron, as an outsider, what do you think, dude?
Oh, okay.
Because
Like,
Aaron is a non-football guy among
yeah,
us.
like
Just letting our
I,
audience know.
like Jude explained this to me earlier, and I was like, what is going on?
Yeah.
But I think there's two takeaways um that I think about when I hear you guys talk about this. And one is, I think evolution in any sport is bound to happen, and I think this was sort of an attempt at evolution in how they conducted things. And the way I see it is, sports will evolve over time, especially the way they're managed, the way they're conducted. Um, and whether that evolution is a good thing or not will only be seen after it happens. And if it's a bad thing, then they deserve criticism and they'll have to revert back the changes that people didn't like. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think sports need to continue to try and evolve, to become bigger and better. So as much as like when I was hearing about this earlier, there's a lot of criticism surrounding it. I think the as an outsider, the way I see it is, I'd rather them try and fail than them not try and do anything with the sport at all, and leave it as it is and not look to grow, not look to change things. And another takeaway, especially regarding this topic, is, dude, football fans are crazy, dude. Y'all are insane. Like,
I love that people are seeing it more.
yeah, like it's so like every sport has, of course, a dedicated fan base, but football is so like way above every other sport in how involved their fan base is in every part of the sport, not just the teams, the manage, it's like the management, the way they conduct the system, like they're so involved and they're so aware of all of this stuff, and it's almost as if they're in the management team. The way they talk, like the way you guys talk about it, is like you guys are like, no, we shouldn't be doing this, we should be doing this. It's like you guys could be employed by them and you guys could be, so that's one of the takeaways that I get is football fans are very, very, very into, much more into the sport than I've seen in any other sport regarding their fandoms and stuff. So yeah.
I'll take it.
That's a nice
Yes,
way. That's
sir.
that's a nice way for me to say y'all crazy, dude.
Yeah, I mean, just to explore that, I think um how Jude said it was eloquently put well. Like it was a working class sport in the first place, so that's why we feel like we have part ownership of it. without the fans, the sport is really nothing.
Hmm. That makes sense.
And
Yeah.
yeah, just to go back to your point of evolution, like you know, I can't. I'll pinpoint it to the English Premier League. For instance, like the doors were opened for like these multi-billionaire owners to come in based on greed itself. So there was already this a sense of greed in itself. Like so, you get these owners from America, the Middle East, Asia, for example, which has no relations to the communities itself. Like a Liverpool, like what does a guy from Boston know about a team from Liverpool? What do they know about their culture and stuff like that? So the the EPL itself has a part to blame for that, and they really should have wondered like what was gonna happen when they opened the doors for billionaires to show their grit and show their standing in a football league to get more money. Like
Mm, that's true.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, it does make so much sense that, well, at the same time, it's already happened, right? And sometimes for the better, like as Amir alluded to, United's actually in a better position now. It is interesting to hear Aaron's point though, because there are a lot of times when it felt like the world was against football fans, right? When especially during the Thatcher era, like I think the phrase hooligan still applies a lot to describe a football fan than any other sport, right? Even though
That
hooligan is
is
not a
true. Yeah.
necessarily it's not a necessarily football term, but it's just been so associated with football that like you don't call a basketball diehard a hooligan at this rate, right? It's just the history has merged with the culture, and it's some they meant it in a bad way, but it clearly it's turned into something that's not. And the influence of the fans is really really important. You can really see it in the European Super League. But step back from it all, right? Is this really surprising? Because especially when you look at it from the lens of America, most sporting competitions here involve a franchising system, and what it does is it pulls revenue and splits it between the same teams year after year. So there's no promotion, no relegation, and, but there's still competition. NBA is still one of the most watched leagues. I mean, even the NFL and MLB, like God, like most of the American sports are the most popular leagues in their own category. It's only
Hmm.
soccer here that is an exception, and I think it's a exception rather than the rule here, right? So you see this with these American sports. What are your thoughts about franchising system in general? Completely different ball game than the Malaysian, not Malaysian, the British system, which is like, oh, promote, relegate, yeah.
so hmm, franchises are very interesting to me. Like when I was getting into like sports like baseball or American football, like it opened up this new new world where there's this thing called salary cap or
Right, right.
like restrictions more in place. It felt more constructed. It felt more like grounded as well. But in reality, it really isn't. it's it's actually giving more money to the owners as well itself. Um, but in terms of the American model, um, we're just talking about in America, right? We're not talking about them bringing it overseas.
You know, there's not a lot of other countries that implement this franchising system, no? Even the
Yeah, I can't think
European
of any.
basketball is. Wait, actually, no. European basketball does implement it similar. But yeah, I mean, when you think of franchising sport, you think of America. And I'll get
Yeah,
to a very good example later on. But yeah, go ahead, finish your thoughts on it.
yeah. The reason why I asked that was because I feel like the EPL, like the English Premier League, is leaning towards that way. Like they want instill a hard cap, which
Mm.
was not the word. It's not a terrible idea because the the amount of money that has been channeled in the league compared to the
Mhm.
lowest team in the league is just absurd.
Right.
So it really depends as well. Like you could use the European Super League for example. Like they were gonna put in $2 billion per team for anyone who participates, and that by itself creates a huge gap. Um, and if you want to, if you just look into franchises by itself, like a team is its own franchise. Juventus was a football club. Now it's international brand as it's trying to go into things like fashion and
Yeah.
what is it? Probably I think they were owned by I think they're owned by the Fiat Group. So more towards car accessories and all that stuff too. But when in terms when we bring this up, like yeah, not good, not good. If
Not good.
if you if you
I like
explain
that conclusion. Not good. Not good.
In
yeah.
conclusion, not good.
Not good. Not good.
uh, when I think about this, because like I'm part American, but I actually have not exposed much to like the only the only sport that I actually watch is basketball, NBA, and that's only recently, right? So I've never really distinguished the difference between an American sports model and a different maybe a European sports model because I don't watch enough sports to kind of compare. But as a degenerate I am, the example that I can bring up is on League of Legends, the NALCS, because when I was originally watching, because I've been watching the NALCS for like years, like it's been a while, and when they implemented the American model, the franchise system into the the tourney, into the video game series, I was like, I was hella confused, and I was also kind of upset because a lot of the teams that I was actually rooting for, which were teams that didn't have much financial backing, smaller teams, not like the underdog teams, kind of got pushed aside in that system. I'm not too sure if it's the same with in other sports with when the system's implemented, but in that case, like teams like Immortals at the time didn't have enough financial backing to actually purchase the franchise slot um, from another team because there was only a fixed amount of slots at the time. So all the underdog teams that were individually owned, like not backed by any big sponsors or corporations, kind of got pushed aside and actually had to leave the tournament at the time. So I remember seeing it and being like, seeing the bias in it, and how the teams that had the popularity, the financial backing, the funding, the sponsors, were always the ones that kept that security and were always the ones at the top, regardless of performance. While the teams that you kind of low key rooting for, right, the underdog teams, the smaller teams, the ones that have potential, they kind of just got washed away. At least in the example talking about. So I'm not too sure if that applies much to like the NBA or stuff like that, but yeah.
That's such a great point that you made actually. Like I think it's very prevalent in sports actually. You can see that these owners are in their own clubs, like, and they don't want anyone to get in,
Yeah.
just like how you say in LCS, and like when issues such as diversity in these upper echelons of these franchises are being brought up, like it gets harder to get in because they're from minority groups and such and such.
Yeah, for sure. And I think especially because the position is secured, um there's no fear like I hate to just keep on bringing up the video game example, but like back then, if you sucked in a season and you kept losing and you kept losing, there's a chance that you would actually drop down to almost like a relegation series instead. Like for example, there was a team called Dignitas that was doing really bad, and they had sponsors and they had support and backing and all that, but because their performance wasn't up to par, they actually were relegated, and they had to work their way up from like the bottom leagues with all the other teams that don't have that position, because then it becomes less about how much money you have, how much influence you have, and more about pure skill, right? Pure performance basis, which I think at core should be what sports is about, you know? So yeah.
Right. And I think Jason will elaborate about this in a while, but when you get a lower placed team that might have gotten 0 wins in the season, perhaps they actually get rewarded, like in
Yeah.
terms of compensation for like draft picks or I don't know, you might get a pool of money for being last. Like this is really unheard of. Not unheard of. Like it's happened before in sports like Formula One as well.
Like a
So yeah,
participation award.
Jason.
I
Exactly, it's
don't really
pretty
have
much.
much to elaborate on this because what I was thinking was also basically somewhat similar to Amir's answer, but definitely didn't see the esports route coming from Aaron, but it makes sense. Um, but I think yeah, since I mean I'll go with Aaron's point. I mean I got into the LCS as well recently, and yeah, I've noticed like there's it's also a lot about instead of pure skill on a certain team, um it's more of the franchising and the brand, like 100 Thieves, like how I if I'm not mistaken, within their first year of being established, they are in they somehow made it to the LCS already because of branding and everything. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know. If you
Mm,
so
no,
I'm not
I
too
think I
sure
think
about
that
that.
I think that's roughly accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, so around there. So it does seem like they probably took the branding and into consideration and placed them in the top leagues. Whereas another example I could use could be Damwon Gaming. They had to work their way all the way to the big leagues for sure. As far as I know, they had to play in like the lower leagues besides the LCK, um, and then they had to play all their way to LCK, and obviously winning the split, and now Worlds, and now obviously from there they're getting they're backing up of Kia, so now they're down on Kia. So I mean, I think that should be the way in terms instead of just like having a big like gaming organization name and just somehow making it to the league with shit players.
Just some,
But at
just
least
some. Sorry.
XD. No, no flame to any other orgs. But yeah, that's how I see it. It should be pure skill.
Hmm. I do have a question because I think especially with what you guys were talking about earlier regarding circling back to Jude's point about money in sports, right? Um, when it comes to situations like this, I know that these like let's say you're looking at your a league, right? And you're looking at how to market your league from a business perspective. One thing that you'd want the most is to have big games, like big teams versus big teams, right? So in that perspective, it's kind of counterproductive for you to then promote like a small underdog team that no one knows about to come up and then versus like a big team because then not many people would want to watch it because it'd be like a blowout win, right? And I can relate to this because like if I'm watching an NBA game, if I see like the Lakers versus the Brooklyn Nets tomorrow, I'd be like, oh shit, that's gonna be a really good game, right? But if I see like I don't know like uh, Cleveland versus like Sacramento Kings, like I wouldn't really, yeah, I wouldn't.
Cavaliers are a bad team apparently.
No, I
I
mean I
mean,
mean for me like it's a team that I think is not really shining this season personally.
No, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. I don't think
Yeah.
they're like a terrible team. I just think this season they're kind of lacking. But if I see like two teams that may not be performing that well or may not be in my eyes crazy big teams for like the star teams of the season, then I wouldn't watch it, and I'm sure a lot of people would have that similar mindset. So do you guys think that in that sense we should be valuing from a business perspective in like growing your league, do you think you should still be valuing based purely on performance, or do you think it's right for people to kind of just assume that, like, treat it like a business, you know? That makes sense?
Yeah, I think there's two elements to your question as well. Um, the first part I'd say when it comes to sports, um, it's normally about the storyline, right? And there's no greater storyline than David versus Goliath, such as when Leicester City won the league. I think that created one of the best memories that a soccer fan or football fan could ever have. Um, and I really see your point when it comes to like basketball, like Sacramento Kings beating the Los Angeles Lakers. Like, who really cares, you know? Like, there isn't really much weightage towards that win.
Yeah.
And even so, like when it comes for time to for them to be in like a competitive side, like a playoffs, they don't really pull their weight as much. But I really feel that's more down to the structure of the league, and in some ways it's fan base. I don't know, like when you talk about like the Cavaliers, when you want to bet the Cavaliers for like a series, it feels like unnatural to do so because in a way because of the franchising system, like you are set your own team and you should just support that team for however you go.
Yeah.
For football, it's more fluid in a way that if you uh there's more hatred in it for sure. Like there's more rival teams. Like choose a Liverpool fan. Whenever like let's say another rival faces Liverpool and they're like considered a lower team, I would support them, and it's just good banter in some ways. If Liverpool loses, and to address your second point, which is to it was regarding money, right?
Yeah. Like,
If
would you treat it like a
it's
business to grow it, or would you still, like, would you prioritize the growth of the league in a business perspective, or would you prioritize enriching the league through just, at its core, like skill? Um, does it make sense? Something like that.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, of course that has to be a priority, but there also must be like a security net to protect like the fans, the consumers. Like if like for example, like we don't want to be called consumers or like customers, for example, for our own club because been supporting we've been supporting for like maybe since we were kids and stuff. And you know, building the sport is good with with a caveat, of course. Like we need to there must be levels of protection from those who really don't care much for the sport, but would contribute to growing it. Um, so in that regard, that's where my headspace is.
Mm-hmm.
Jason, any thoughts? I might have something
Um,
after this.
I think you can finish your point first if you want.
No, it's okay. You can go.
Yeah. The way I see it, I think it's both. I see growth in both ways. Obviously, skill in business, because I think that also plays in the part of like why the NBA is that establishes the G League, uh, because they from there, from people who didn't get drafted, that's how they, also scout and recruit players who are improving or has skill, or some players who got drafted in the league play in the G League just to improve. So it's also that's also a way of building skill. In terms of the business standpoint, though, uh, I
Do
don't
you think
really
that
have.
do you think the executive level got greater like a few years ago, like 2 decades ago? Maybe you see like so many much more incompetent businessmen like mishandling the finances of a club,
That is very
for
true.
example.
I do see it, yeah. Um, it's definitely it's definitely worse compared to the decades ago, but yeah, I don't have really much to expand on that, to be honest.
I'm not sure if you remember, but do you remember Portsmouth or like those clubs that went into like debt and they were because they're bankrupt? I feel as though it doesn't happen nowadays anymore.
I haven't heard of Portsmouth in a while, but no, I have not heard of that as well.
They went into
Yeah,
bankruptcy for what? Like they
just mishandling their finances. Like those were like common occurrences back then. Like you could find like five or six, and now it's like expedited in a way. Like it used to be like zero, now it's like more and more because of the pandemic.
for sure. I mean, that's external factors as well, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Hmm. I mean, going back to Aaron's question, I think money is a good thing, but if it doesn't come at the expense of the heart of the sport itself, right? I think it was very, at least in my opinion, it's really easy for league. Although Aaron, you share opinions about it being a negative experience to see the minnows, in a sense, the minnows
Initially.
of the league teams in the League of Legends series go away like that. It didn't have such a huge cultural backing it to that point, and there weren't any cultural norms for it to follow. That doing such a huge financial overhaul would become controversial in a sense, right?
Yeah,
Like
for sure.
even I think about esports because we talk a lot about football, and there's so many examples in football. Like even Call of Duty, right? I think Call of Duty's change into a franchising system was the most controversial esports shift to franchising, primarily because teams that you associated based on the brand had to be associated with a city, and
Yeah.
yeah, as a person who doesn't watch Call of Duty, the fact that I know about the controversy it garnered it's crazy. It had that meant that the backlash itself was a lot, but we focused a lot today on the negatives of money. But Amir does have a good point, especially with regards to Portsmouth, where back then you'd see a lot more teams failing and have not had much of a cushion to recuperate or to rebound after, because finances at the end of the day is what it takes for you to pay your players. And you hear a lot of teams in football, and I really want to stress that football is such an interesting sport because it really is one of the few that has such a huge historical legacy. And it's not as easy to taint it with the modern financial techniques that other sports leagues are doing. That's why it's such a good case. But yeah, with regards to that, before when you're bankrupt, you go into administration and things get really bad. And I think fans would rather prefer a system with financial help rather than that kind of culture, right? But definitely not at the expense of the cultural norms that they've created over the past few decades. And I think that was the issue with the European Super League. But that is a good way to end the entire podcast, because
Yeah.
what was supposed to be a podcast on money in sports turned into a podcast on money in general, right? Like the thing about money, and we only use sports as a case study,
For sure.
but I think
Yeah.
it applies generally, right? We can't be too criticizing about money, because it drives it's difficult to admit, but it drives a lot of things forward.
Definitely. Like,
Damn,
a lot of that wouldn't be there without money.
yeah,
It's
I
just
really
endless.
wouldn't. Semi deep. But since we're on the topic of money, this is going to influence our question of the week as well. So, damn, it's been a while, huh? And I know it's only been 2 weeks, but I haven't made up a question of the week since like a month ago, because I normally have a backlog of them. But this question of the week is: if you were given $100, which is equivalent to 400 ringgit, Malaysian ringgit. So if you're given $100 right now, what would you spend it on?
Food.
That
Like,
was quick, homie. Yeah, go ahead, go ahead, go
like
ahead.
wait. Give it $100, 100 ringgit.
Now, no, $100, so 400 ringgit.
Oh sheesh. Oh, okay.
I was like, 400 ringgit?
Dude, have you been out for dinner with Jason, dude? Man's bougie, got bougie taste buds.
Okay,
What the fuck?
Wow.
No,
Dude, I'm like,
no, that's
yeah,
cap.
I'm like, yo, I want to get mama food, which is equivalent to like street food, right? I guess for some
Hey, hey,
people.
hey,
And then
yeah,
Jason's
I got
like,
mama too,
no,
dog.
can I get some Wagyu steak?
That's cap. That's cap.
Okay.
That's cap.
That's an interesting response.
I would say food, like,
Alright.
because for me now, I mean, just to summarize it really quickly, like going out to eat food equals going out to socialize. Like if I'm going out to meet people, we're probably gonna go out and eat or go out and like drink. So it makes sense for me to like get two birds with one stone, to use that money for food, because then I can also use that money to meet new people, to meet friends, stuff like that. So
Right.
yeah, I would say I'd probably spend it on food.
It's a good call. Amir?
Um, I'm really thinking deep on this one, boys. Yo,
Okay.
I'm in lost in
because
myself, dude.
because you really have to spend it,
Yeah.
right? You really have to spend it. You can't even
You
save
spend it. Yeah, you can't really save
Yeah.
it. But
Dang.
okay,
It's
that
amazing.
says Jason, you can go first.
Please.
I'll spend on clothes, bro.
Oh, that's
my
a good
God.
That's a good call. That's a good call. I actually know my answer. I did spend it on a plane ticket to Vegas.
Oh my God.
Oh,
But then you
Yeah.
get to Vegas and you've used up all the money.
Don't worry about it. But yeah.
Yes.
that's actually a good one. Okay, yeah, flight ticket to LA.
Oh, yep.
From
Hey,
Seattle,
anyway.
not from Kuala Lumpur. That'd be like fucking hell.
Yeah, that would be crazy. I don't think it's $100, but yeah, I understand you. You'd spend like half of your ticket on. Okay, that's clean. Okay, those are interesting choices. I guess if we were owners of football clubs, we wouldn't be that bad, right? They all seem pretty reasonable choices.
Thanks, D.
All spending on tickets.
But instead of $100, it's $100 million. But anyway, let's move on to the song of the week.
Wait, Jason. Oh wait, Jason already said
Okay.
clothes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Go ahead, go
No.
ahead, go ahead.
Yes.
But yes, let's go to the song of the week. Aaron, would you like to start off?
Oh shit. Okay, my song. I'm so used to Abid being here, dude. Sad music plays in the background. Yeah, my song of the week would be "Politics and Violence" by Dominic Fike.
Ooh.
It's a clean one. Amir?
When This Rain Stops by Wendy.
Oh, yo,
Yeah.
damn! Everyone going sad. Yeah, Jason.
Solid by Young Thug and Gunna featuring Drake.
Wait, that breaks the.
Of course, the guy that wants to buy clothes recommends Young Thug.
Yo, solid, bro.
Hey
Solid.
man, hey Drake don't miss, man.
Yeah,
Drizzy don't
dude.
miss.
dude.
I sound like fucking Ovid now. That's gross.
Anyway, my song is "I Still Love You a Lot" by Big G.
Damn.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Thanks for coming to the
Anyway, it's a wrap, everybody. It really do be a wrap. Thank you to all once again for tuning into the 12th ATSCast of the season. Bye, everyone.
Ciao, ciao.
Later.
What do we normally tell Jason? Jason,
Jason.
hit it. Something. Sorry, Abdi.
Jason, hit us with the outro.